My name is Lynette Owens again, for those of you just joining. I'm the Vice President of Global Consumer Education and Marketing for Trend Micro. I also founded the Internet Safety for Kids and Families program, which is what this evening is based upon. And we are pleased to bring you this program, which we've been doing for a decade here in the United States with our partner PTO Today. Trend Micro is actually one of the world's largest cybersecurity companies. And about 14 years ago, we decided out of a philanthropic initiative that technology alone won't be the answer to keeping people safe online. The answer is a combination of using great technology, but also being informed. Education is an important element of how we can all use the internet safely and in positive ways. This particular program is focused for parents and for kids. Tonight's session is actually directed to parents, but we also have a program for children and students, which we've had to change since the pandemic. But we used to go into schools, your children's schools, in fact, talking about all of the same things that we will tonight. So I do want to welcome all of you. As you can see, many of you have said hello from the places that you're from. If you haven't said hello yet in the chat, please tell us where you're dialing in from. We want to welcome you all. We're excited to be able to bring this program to parents across the country in a virtual format now for almost 2 years. And it's worked out really well. So there's some nice things that did happen as a result of COVID. And one of that is how we're able to stay connected even from far away. And again, if you're joining and would like to listen in Spanish, please select the globe icon and you can listen to my colleague, Aida Mendoza, who will do the session for you in Spanish. Please sign in also on the form in the chat. So a couple of things, just housekeeping. Please use the Q&A button to submit your questions. There is a question already in here. Is this appropriate for my 6th grade student to watch or listen to? Absolutely. Even though the content is more directed to you as parents, there's nothing about the content tonight that they couldn't listen to. And in fact, there's a couple of sections I think I'll remember to direct to the students specifically. You can submit your questions in English or Spanish because Aida will help me to answer those for you, okay? And this is being recorded, so a copy of the recording will be made available by request only. The organizer of your school will be the one to receive the link of the recording. So please request that of the person who organized this event at your school. Finally, when you exit the event tonight, when you close out of Zoom, you will see a survey pop up. It's very brief, but we appreciate any kinds of feedback that you could give us so we can continue to provide a service to communities everywhere that is hopefully beneficial. So I want to get to know you a little bit better, but before I get into this question, a little bit about myself. I've been with Trend for 20 years. I have 2 high school students, one who is about to graduate. I've been doing this work for 14 years, so I've seen my children go through all of the phases of, well, not just childhood, but also the relationship and their relationship with technology and my relationship with them because of technology. So we are going to touch upon quite a number of things tonight, but I'd like to get to know you a little bit better. And if you wouldn't mind using the polling option, which is going to come up here in just a minute here, let me know, how old is your oldest child? Are they A, 5 years old or younger, B, 6 to 10 years old, C, 11 to 14 years old, or D, 15 or older? How old is your oldest child? Please use the polling function to answer the question if you could. Okay. Well, I must say that while we have a category that seems to be the majority at this time, this is a session that's trending older for sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll here. And looks like we have the majority of you in that sweet spot, 6 to 10 years old, but you know, in combination, those of you with kids 11 years old and all the way up also actually make up the majority. So we have a nice split between the younger ones and the older ones. We will have a lot of content that applies to children of all ages tonight. So we'll be sure to make sure it's relevant for you. And this second question actually would be very helpful for us to know what you're most interested in hearing about tonight. Is it A, managing screen time for my kids? B, helping my kids stick to age-appropriate content? C, dealing with online bullying or hate? D, getting ideas for positive uses of the internet? Or E, not sure, just here to learn something new. So please make your selection in the poll, A, B, C, D, or E. And again, if you are just joining us, you can select the globe icon to listen in Spanish. And in the chat, you will see a link to sign in so that we know you were here. Please go ahead and sign in. Just give us your name and the name of your school. Okay, good. Well, we have a winner. There's definitely one of these that seems to be rising to the top, even though some of you have children that are 15 and above. And that the winner of this one was B, helping my kids stick to age-appropriate content, with runners-up of managing screen time and not sure, just here to learn something new. A few of you, a couple of you are interested in positive ideas and also wanting to address the issues of online bullying or hate. We're actually going to be touching on all of these things tonight, but this gives us a good sense of where we might want to spend a little bit more of our time. Great. So I think it goes without saying that a lot has changed over the last couple of years. Maybe you've had time to reflect on that, maybe you haven't. But even with all that change, there's a lot of things that didn't. And the first is that our children still very much need our guidance when it comes to technology use, because the risks are still there. And actually, in some cases, some of those risks were even more exaggerated over the course of the last 2 years. But we also cannot forget that the benefits were always there. And again, the benefits might have also shown themselves in ways they didn't prior to the pandemic. So that is why teaching our kids how to be great digital citizens is more paramount than ever. We know from every study and every metric that internet use for all ages skyrocketed over the last 2 years. And while the children have gone back to school and some of life is starting to return to the new normal, where we're not necessarily inside and at home all the time, I think our relationship to technology, our children's relationship to technology has forever changed. And that is why teaching these skills is more important than ever. And when we talk about digital citizenship, we of course are going to talk about risks, safety. We will talk about that. How do you know what the risks are and how to avoid them? How do we teach our children what the risks are and how they can avoid them? But it doesn't stop there. Digital citizenship includes many other things. Another element of it is digital literacy. It's the how I actually do these things. So even if we impress upon kids, hey, it's important to protect your privacy, and here are the reasons why nothing you ever really do online is private. But the second step is, how then do I actually protect my privacy? What is two-factor authentication? Where are the privacy settings? Should I be using, limit to friends only or friends of friends? Which of these protects my privacy or my safety the most? Digital citizenship also includes how we behave towards others, how we behave in the context of an online community. What are the rules of using those online spaces? And finally, mastery. Very often when we're talking to children about the use of technology, it can very often be a very long list of what they should not do. We have to remember that digital citizenship is as much about what not to do as it is about what they should be doing with technology. What are ways that they could be using technology that could be helpful for them and their futures, helpful to others around them, or good for the world? And that is why, and we'll touch on all of these things today, we actually like to organize all of these concepts into 4 buckets. Be online, and while you're there, be safe, be kind, and be savvy. And what we mean by each of these is, first of all, being online, for us as parents, I think we've already accepted that there's no going back. The internet is an integral part of society. It's becoming a more relevant and important part of our children's lives, whether it comes to education or connecting with people who mean something to them or learning about the world around them. But as parents, we're responsible to make sure we're setting up the right environment, setting the right rules, and setting a good example for them. On being safe, this is about protecting privacy, protecting personal information, and also protecting our physical selves. Being kind is not only about how we treat others. We look at kindness as something we should also learn ourselves, but also teach our children how to direct some of that kindness to oneself inwardly. And finally, being savvy is about teaching good habits and encouraging good uses. It's one thing to know what the right thing is to do. It's a whole other thing to put it into practice. And before I go forward, again, if you're just joining us, please use the Q&A. I know you're going to have a lot of questions coming up here in a minute. Please use the Q&A so we can more easily track your questions and get to answer them. And I will also say, based on these 4 areas, we spend most of our time in the first 2, blue and green, and a little less on orange and pink, not because they're not as important, it's only because there's a lot more detail in the first 2 boxes, okay? So I think I won't belabor this part since, early on in the pandemic, this was a lot more relevant, but our children are still using technology for schoolwork, for homework, even for fun with friends, for leisure. But we still need to be cognizant of some very basic things like protecting our eyes, our posture, and making sure that we're not becoming sort of chained to those devices and those screens. This is actually good for us as adults too. And that is, number 1 is the eyes. We know from working with the Digital Wellness Lab, which is a lot of pediatricians have been reporting over the last 2 years. Children are coming in more than ever with complaints about headaches, neck aches, things that are aching that never ached as much before the pandemic. So, encourage your kids. You can invest in blue light blocking glasses. You can get packs of them on Amazon. They don't require a prescription. They just block that blue light coming off screens, which can be very, very damaging to the back of the eye, to the retina. So, you know, either that, or make sure every 30 minutes you get up and look at something 30 feet away. It could be out the window for 30 seconds. The 30-30-30 rule is another way that you can protect your eyes, and your children can protect their eyes. And with regard to posture, I see so many kids doing homework with laptops. They're on their stomach and the laptop is folded up in front of them. And I have, you know, that's just not a position that can be very comfortable for too long, or they're slouching in a couch somewhere. So if your children are working at homework or doing anything on screens, make sure that they're really taking care of their physical selves. Getting up and moving obviously is a very easy way to preserve eyes and posture. But, you know, and set the good example yourselves. If this is something that they see you doing a lot, they're just going to mimic you. So try to make this a habit for everyone in your house. The second is on technology. Now, here's where we're going to get a little bit techie, but I won't get too techie. For those of you who might also be using a device at home for work, let's say, or even for anything, but your children are on there at the same time, there's some things we want to make sure you're aware of. The first is, when you bought your router, it came with a default password, and many times people never change it. So if that is something you have not done in a while, I highly recommend that you do that, because now more than ever, as I said earlier, everybody's online much more than ever. The other people who know that are criminals. Cyber criminals know this. So they're trying to find all kinds of ways, and we've seen it, all kinds of ways to either, you know, hack your home network or somehow take advantage of either you not knowing anything about security for your routers or whatever. And the other thing about routers is very often they require updates. So make sure if that hasn't happened in a while, you update that, because usually those updates are trying to plug security holes. And the reason that's important too is because your children and you are sharing now probably a home network more than ever before. And if your young children accidentally visit some site or, you know, tap on something that actually is malicious software, and you have sensitive devices on the same network, that could be very dangerous for whatever information is on the devices you're working on. So keeping things updated, changing passwords on the router often. The second is, most modern networks, if you bought it in the last few years, have the ability to separate, have two separate networks. One is the main and one is the guest network. We highly recommend that devices that don't have sensitive information, like maybe your children's Kindles, Xbox, iPads, the things they're using, maybe not their work, maybe not their school Chromebooks, but maybe just gaming and reading devices. Put that on the guest network, and then anything that has sensitive information on the main network. The reason for this, again, is if your child clicks on something by accident and it happens to be spyware or some kind of other malicious software, it will protect the other devices from getting harmed by splitting your network like that. So again, kids' devices on the guest network, in other devices on the main network. Wi-Fi extenders, if everybody's at home and you're just trying not to, somebody's got to work in a different room, but the Wi-Fi connection isn't so great, we recommend a Wi-Fi extender, because that means everybody in all parts of the home could have better connection. And just having conversations with the family saying, hey, I need to be on this call tonight, maybe a Zoom call like this one. So if you plan on gaming and another kid plans on streaming Netflix, you might have some conflicts going on with your network. So just having conversations about, please don't use it while I'm trying to use it. With regard to security, we recommend that you make sure, even on your kids' devices, that there's security software. Again, these last 2 years has become even more critical. The cyber criminals are more active than ever. So this includes phones, by the way, phones, laptops, desktops, and so on. Please use that a reputable security software and keep it up to date. If you do a search online for the top 10, you'll find a number of options. Some of them might have already been installed on your laptop. Make sure it's up to date, that you're updating it and keeping your subscription up to date. You'll find trend on there, by the way, because we do have products for that, but any one of those in the top, please use that. And within that product, there's something called a firewall. Microsoft, if you use Microsoft Windows, this also has a firewall, but it's important to turn it on because it's actually looking at what's going in and out of the computer and saying, this is okay, but this is not okay, right? So make sure that is on. Strong passwords, very important. We'll talk a minute about how you could actually start teaching your children the importance of strong passwords and what the difference between a strong and a weak one is. Anybody use Facebook out there? Put it in the chat. Anybody using Facebook or Instagram? Maybe Twitter? My guess is Facebook, most of you. Just tell me in the chat, yes or no. Do you use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any number of those social networks? Great, okay. Anybody using multi-factor authentication or two-step verification? Okay. If you don't know what this is or have not turned it on, I highly recommend, this is a setting in security or privacy that can be set on almost every social networking site, even a lot of gaming sites, your email accounts. This ensures that you have a second lock on your account. The password is the first lock, but if someone for some reason stole your password, they would be able to get into your email account, right, or your Facebook account. But if you have multi-factor authentication or two-step verification, it's sometimes called, turned on, you enter the password and now it's going to send you a code to your phone as a text or to your email. And now you have to enter the code. And that's the second lock to get into the account. So please this is one of the best ways to actually protect your privacy and your children's privacy. And we'll show you in a minute that this exists for Roblox. It exists for TikTok. This setting actually does exist for a lot of children's apps too. Make sure you turn that on. And a virtual private network, we recommend anytime you're connecting outside of your own home, or perhaps for those of you who work from home, you have to use a virtual private network in order to connect to your company's systems. But if you are on vacation or your kids are somewhere public, you know, and maybe their phones can only use Wi-Fi and not cell service, they really should be connecting using a VPN and not on public Wi-Fi. There is far too much crime that happens, cybercrime that happens over public Wi-Fi. So again, just like security software, if you look up the top virtual VPN software options out there, again, Trend has one, but there are many, many others too. I highly recommend. This will be very protective for them and for you. Okay. On good habits, and I think that I have mentioned before that updating a router is important, but really you should be updating everything, every app, your phone, if you've got an Android phone or an iPhone, there's always updates coming. Do it immediately, because again, most of those updates are plugging security holes. Sometimes they're just trying to improve the user experience, but most of the time they're plugging security holes. And so I can't stress it enough. Same with your children's devices and their apps too. Please make sure they're updating regularly. You know, on strong passwords, there's a couple of things you can do. For those of you with children in that 6 to 10 age range, I think explaining to them first that the longer the password is, the stronger it is. Using words that are easy to write or read or spell, any word that you can find in the dictionary is not a good password. In fact, criminals have already figured out systems that can just use every word in the dictionary to try and crack somebody's password. So don't use any word in the dictionary. What we recommend at the younger ages is come up with a sentence like this one: might need to buy more toilet paper soon. And use the first letter of each of the words, throw in a number and an extra special character like an exclamation point or, you know, the pound sign, hash sign. And that can be your password. So it looks really hard to remember MN2B MTPS exclamation point. But if you remember the sentence, might need to buy toilet paper soon, that's an easier way to teach younger kids, here's a way to come up with a really strong password. Now, for those of you, for parents, but also those of you with older kids, especially the ones who start using tons of apps with tons of passwords to remember, then we might recommend a password manager. Google has one for free. Micro also has one for free. You can look up any number of them. And this just gives you a way to more easily manage all of those passwords by only having to remember one in order to get, you know, figure out the rest of your passwords. So those are two options. Again, depending on the age of your children, one is to come up with that long sentence and have them change it every once in a while. Just a good habit. The other is to use a password manager, but I don't think younger children don't need to use a password manager quite yet. Hopefully they're not using 20 to 40 apps like the rest of us. Finally, backing everything up, and make sure if you can do 2 backups, one to the cloud. Those of you who are using Apple devices, you might be backing things up to Apple iCloud. Those of you who are Android families might be backing things up to Google Cloud. That's great. But we also recommend, if you can, get one of those these hard drive ones. You can get at Best Buy as a secondary backup. And the reason is that if one is compromised, you have the other as well. You could do 2 cloud backups, but if for some reason you just can't get an internet connection and you need the backup, you have the hard drive option as well. Okay. I have a question in here. Is it safe to get a kid a cell phone? You know, I think that is up to you as a family and what you think your child needs it for. I can't tell you how many times I've done sessions where parents say, how old before they get a cell phone? And I wish I could give you a definitive answer, but it's really up to your needs as a family and what you think they need it for. One option for those of you who are contemplating what that first phone might look like, what we did as a family is we went with the Go phone from AT&T. It's a prepaid phone option where it is in fact a phone, smartphone, right? But what's nice is you don't have to get locked into a very expensive payment plan. You only have to put a certain amount of money at a time. We also chose that only 2 to 4 numbers were allowed when they first got it, which was family only, and Wi-Fi for connecting to anything else. But we limited the kinds of apps early on in early ages. The reason we gave it to them at the beginning of middle school, because they were going to be taking the bus for the first time and be walking home at home alone for about 15, 20 minutes, because I had to pick up the other one from a different school at the same time. So that made us feel better. It made us feel like they had a way to reach us and know that they were safe. But we did not allow social media until later, until 13. And actually my younger one wasn't even interested until 15. So he got lots of social connections just from texting. He didn't need social media till later. Okay, now on the tech tools, a lot of you said in the polling, you were interested in how to help your children stick to age appropriate content. So we're going to spend a little time on some of those apps and devices that your kids love and how you can help them stick to age appropriate content. All right, so these settings, exist not only to limit the kinds of content, but it can also limit how much they're spending on in-app purchasing, even the amount of time they're spending on it. And some of these tools can give you reporting on what they've actually been doing on the device. And they don't cost anything. They actually exist right in the apps themselves, right in the devices themselves. You know, a lot of people ask me about, should I pay for this tool? There are these sort of parental monitoring tools. They can get really pricey. I will tell you, over the last 5 to 6 years, these apps that we're going to talk about have gotten better by building them right into their products. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Any families out there whose children are using Apple devices, let me know in the chat. Are you an Apple family? iOS family? Just let me know in the chat. And if you are you familiar with this setting called screen time? I'll talk a little bit about screen time now, for those of you who might not be familiar. Basically, if you're an Apple family, you're going to set up an iTunes, an Apple account for the children in your family that who have their own devices or are using a device other than yours. And by setting them up under your accounts, you can start to do things under the screen time setting, such as limiting how much time they're spending on a specific app. You can limit the kinds of apps they're even allowed to download, and other things. And so what you're seeing here is just screen grabs of how you would actually do that. It's very illuminating to see. You can see this even for yourself, how much you pick up your phone, how many times you actually pick it up, not just how long you've been on it. But with your children, you can see, oh, gosh, they've been on Instagram for hours. They've been on YouTube for even longer. I need to talk to them about that, and then we're going to limit that. And you can do that right in these settings. So if you've not used screen time before or not familiar with it, I recommend that you take a look at that. And Apple has a great tutorial on how to actually set this up. Any Android families out there? Any Android families out there? Let me know in the chat. It's probably been about 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years old now. Google launched a free app called Google Family Link. And it basically does all of the things I just described to you with iOS screen time. It's just a separate app that you have to connect to your child's Android devices, so you can filter the kinds of apps they can download. You can also, monitor, but also limit their screen time and even track their location, which you could do with Apple as well through the Find My Phone setting. So if you're not familiar with that, again, it's free for any people who have Android devices. And anybody's kids use YouTube? Oh, I'm sure your children are using YouTube. There, yeah. Oh my gosh. For YouTube, if you're not aware, they announced just late last year a new setting called the supervised account. Before this, your child would get on YouTube and who knows what they were going to see. They did have a setting called safety settings, but that mostly filtered adult content, but really nothing else. What Google has done now with YouTube is create 3 levels under the supervised account: Explore, Explore More, or Most of YouTube. These settings, you select one of these based on the child who is using YouTube on your account, right? And Explore is going to give them access to content that's probably okay for up to age 10. And then if you choose Explore More, it'll be all content that's okay up to age 13, 14. And then Most of YouTube, which will take them all the way up to age 17, but it stops at adult, anything that's 18 plus adult content, right? So this is a nice way now of allowing your child to use YouTube and not worrying about what on earth that next video that might show up would look like. It would also prevent them from searching for things that might also be inappropriate for that age range. So I highly recommend, if you're not aware of YouTube's supervised account, that you consider using this setting for your children that love watching stuff on YouTube, so you don't have to worry about what other stuff might come next after the video they just watched. Okay? Anybody out there have allowed your kids to use TikTok? Yes or no? TikTok being used in your house? Yes or no? In the chat. Usually we see a mix of yes, no's, no ways, not ever. And I'm seeing that now. We've got quite a few of behind my back. Okay, thank you for being honest. Yes, bad decision. Thank you also for being honest. Listen, at some point, they're all going to be old enough to make their own choices. You know, I think TikTok is today what YouTube was before, and you name it. Every app, there's always been an app coming along that makes us worry. And there'll be another one. I'm sure the next one is already on the horizon. I want to make you aware of something that they made available 2 years ago. They haven't done a great job of telling the world about. It's called TikTok Family Pairing. So this is a way for you, for those of you who have said no, but at some point you're probably going to have to say yes, or you will say yes. This is a way for you and your child to ease into the experience of TikTok. So you will go to a setting called Digital Wellbeing, and you will select Family Pairing. And from here, you need to actually download TikTok both on your device and on your child's device for this to work. One of them you're going to designate as the parent, and the other one as the child. As a parent, you will have the ability to limit the kind of content that they can see. You can limit who can actually message them in the app, and you can limit the amount of time they're actually using it. Now, the last time I checked, I think you had options of like 45 minutes or 60 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that. I haven't checked it in a bit, but it does work. And with regard to content, they do a pretty good job of filtering it. So when I tested it, it was animals, you know, doing cute things, and senior citizens doing really, you know, TikTok dances. Pretty harmless stuff. But this is a way for you to say, hey, I'm okay for you to look at what's on there, but I actually don't want you creating stuff yet. You can just see, and it'll be very, very safe in this kind of model until your child proves to you or is old enough to use it fully. TikTok Family Pairing is a way to introduce it in a way that both of you are comfortable, and not show them everything on there right away. Okay. Anybody's kids using Roblox? I know there's some of you out there. There's no way. Roblox is probably one of the most popular gaming apps on the planet right now, right? Roblox. So a couple things about Roblox. Roblox is not a game. Roblox is a platform of games and gamers. There are young children actually learning to develop their own games. I play the, I keep forgetting the name, where you have a bumblebee and you dig flowers and you put the pollen in and you get more bees. I know there's one for pet adoptions. There's all kinds of really fun games there. But the thing about Roblox is that we may think it's only 10-year-olds on there. It's not. In fact, Roblox themselves are already saying that their user base is getting older and older. So there's quite a few people who might be a lot older than your children using it. The second thing about Roblox is that even though we're just avatars moving around in these games, you can freely chat. And you don't necessarily know who your child might be chatting with on there. So we highly recommend that, as you see in this short video, that you become familiar with the privacy and security settings in Roblox. You see two-step verification is offered. You need to create a PIN just like in other apps like iOS Screen Time, so that only you can change these settings. But you can limit who can message them, who can chat with them, to no one or just friends. Please make sure that you've spent some time in there to pay attention to these settings. Again, because Roblox does a really good job of monitoring the chats going on between players, but they don't catch everything. And because people can create worlds and create games, sometimes there's characters walking around with t-shirts on. Their avatars have a t-shirt on with really inappropriate words or images on it too. So that's not anything that these settings are necessarily going to filter. That's something that you as a parent play the game with your kids, get to know it a little bit so that you feel comfortable with what they're doing with it. Okay. And again, you can put the questions in the chat if you, in the Q&A if you have any questions. Is anyone familiar with Discord? Anybody's kids using Discord? Anybody even know what Discord is? Okay, so it looks like some of you's children is actually using Discord. Some of you are no longer allowing it. Discord has actually been around for quite a while, but it was really a place that true gamers, older, probably in the, millennials and older Gen X people were using Discord. It's the places where gamers would hang out and so on. But over the course of the pandemic, Discord became popular among younger kids because it was a place that you could hang out. It's like a super chat app, basically. And when you create groups, we call it group texting on phones, they call it servers. You set up a server, it's a group of people who are communicating with each other. And, they're getting better, but they're a little bit behind all of the other apps that I just showed you when it comes to safety settings. They've hired tons of new people in their safety department, so they're getting much, much better here. And you can limit things like who can, scanning the kinds of messages they're getting, or even limiting who they're allowed to be connecting to. They even give you now a way to report or block people that are misbehaving. So, I would say Discord is very cool because you can do things together, like co-watch a movie, or even like, watch somebody together it was almost as if kids are hanging out in the same room while a couple of them are playing on the Xbox, but they're doing it virtually in a place like Discord. And this was, again, during the height of the pandemic, was a fantastic way to make kids feel connected with people they missed. But the downside of Discord is that there were already lots of older people using it. And so, it not quite perfect yet with safety settings. So for those of you with younger kids, I recommend that you probably steer clear of this until they're a little bit older and until Discord's really caught up with everybody else with safety settings, because Amazon and Netflix and Disney Plus introduced ways to co-watch movies together, for example. They were behind though. Discord was already able to do this long before they were. So that's why the popularity went up so much over the last 2 years. Just be aware of it. If you're not familiar with Discord, I want you to know that this is out there, very popular among kids. Anybody's kids use the Xbox? Let me know in the chat. Xbox? Any Xbox kids out there, families out there? Maybe you use Nintendo or PlayStation instead. So I won't belabor this about the Xbox. They did introduce a new beautiful app. If you ever decide to buy an Xbox, you're able to, without having to go to the Xbox, you can just control things from an app. They have to ask you, can I have more time to play? Can I play with this person and so on. And you can say yes or no right from the app. The other gaming devices like Nintendo and PlayStation also have these options. So if these are not tools that you're using yet today, I highly recommend that you do for the gaming devices. Number one, because almost every game is social now, which means they could be playing against people they don't even have never met, don't know. And the second is because, believe it or not, cyber criminals are finding ways to trick kids in these games. They're pretending to, I'm going to sell you a cheat code so you can get to another level of Fortnite, or some special hard to get skin or tool for Call of Duty or whatever. They are more active here as well because of the pandemic. So it's important to take a look at the settings that you as parents can limit the kinds of games they can play. Many of them allow you to block. If the game is for teen and above, you can put a setting there where it won't allow them to download a game like that age. Or if it's a disc, the gaming disc, the disc won't play if the setting is on that prohibits them from playing games that are ultra violent or whatever, just an age limit that you're not okay with. At Trend, because we're a technology company and because we've been doing this education program for 14 years around the world, we decided to turn our engineers' energy towards a free app to you called Trend Micro Family. Please give it a try. It's at tmfamily.care, and it does a lot of the things that we've just talked about. What we're trying to build in here is to make it easier for you. Rather than to go to every app and do the settings, you could go to just this app to do it in one place. So today we support Snapchat and Instagram. Together, you could set the privacy settings all in one place rather than having to go to both of them for your kids. We do a lot of other things like, monitoring things that might be dangerous for your kids or risky for your kids. But give it a try. We'd love to get your feedback if you're willing to give it a try and give us your feedback. We don't intend on ever charging for this because we just feel it's way too important. It's part of our work. tmfamily.care. Okay, so we talked a lot about tools that can help, make sure your children are using things that are appropriate for their ages, and in ways that you feel are healthy, such as keeping the time limits reasonable. But, tech tools alone can't do this. You as parents need to set the expectations. And when you're setting rules, there are 5 things to keep in mind to make sure you've considered all of these as you set these ground rules with your kids. And by the way, we recommend that as you build these rules, have your children weigh in on it too. They're more apt to stick to rules they help to build. And not just the rules, but also what should the consequence be if they don't follow those rules. It's a powerful exercise to have children be a part of building the consequences, that they should face if they don't stick to the rules. So the first decision is, what are they allowed to use? Every app and game has age ratings, but sometimes that doesn't tell you. So we're big proponents of an organization called Common Sense Media. Anybody familiar with Common Sense Media? They do a great job of reviewing apps, games, websites. They even review movies, television shows, and they give you a different perspective, not just what age that the person who made the app or game says, but they're going to tell you a whole lot of other things. For example, in movies, they'll often tell you it's rated PG, but there's a couple scenes where there's this, use of substances, or maybe there's some adult situations that maybe you might not be comfortable with as a parent. So I'm putting their URL in the chat there, commonsensemedia.org. If you're wondering, is this app game okay for my child? take a look at what they have to say, because I think it's a great, other opinion. The second is when and how long. Second and third is when they're allowed to use it. For example, not till homework is done or only on weekends. And how long, we're going to talk about in a minute. We have an exercise called the 24-hour rule. Where are they allowed to use it? One thing we recommend is you do not charge any devices in the bedrooms at night. They should all be going to a different place in the house. There's no reason they need to be looking at screens right before bedtime. In fact, they shouldn't be looking at blue light screens for at least 1 hour before bedtime, because it will be disruptive to sleep. Are they allowed to use it at a friend's house? Are they allowed to use it on the bus if they're taking the bus, or home from school? Where are they allowed to use it? And with whom? Limiting, when they're younger, keep it to the people they just know. And as they get older, you could expand. You can allow them to add more people into the address book of their phone, for example, or through a gaming device, you allow more people that they're allowed to game with as they get older. I'd love to know in the chat, what rules work for you and your family? Are there any rules that work for you and your family? And are there any rules that you tried that didn't work so well? Please put that in the chat, any rules. In our house, we are not allowed to have phones at the dinner table. No one's allowed to look at it. No one's even allowed to have it at the dinner table. And in my house, we're lucky if we get to sit down to dinner sometimes, because my kids are so busy. But do you have any rules that work for you in your house? Please put it in the chat. I'm going to move on then to, oh, that's great. Thank you, Hortensia. I think, turning it off before a certain time. Oh, I like that one. Chores in order to get screen time. I like that. Earn the screen time. Fantastic. Fantastic. I do want to have a conversation. A lot of parents really fret over the screen time issue. Some of you in the poll early on talked about screen time and how, it obviously went up at the beginning of the pandemic, and maybe it didn't go too far down over the last 2 years. So one of the things that we like to advocate for you to think about as adults, even in your own lives, but certainly as you look at your child's day and as you talk to your children about what is healthy when it comes to screen time. Well, here's the thing. Screen time is kind of not the right word for it, because they're looking at screens in school. They're using screens to do homework when they come home. Maybe they're using screens just to communicate with family who are far away, like grandparents. So it's not as if we can really look at screen time in and of itself. It's probably more important to think about what we're doing during those uses of not only screens, but in the 24 hours we have in a day. And so the way to think about it is this, and this comes from the Digital Wellness Lab, many pediatricians advising to think about it this way. The first is to talk to your children about, hey, there's only 24 hours in a day. So let's ask ourselves, how much of that time are you spending to support your physical health? Ask them, how many hours did you sleep? Did you have meals? Maybe how much time you spent outside going for a walk, riding your bike, things that are good for your physical health. Okay. Now you add on top of that, how much time in a day did you do things that support yourself as a learner? How many hours were you in school doing homework? Maybe you were practicing an instrument or some other hobby that really expands your ability as a learner, reading, all of those activities that support you as a learner. Now, on top of that, how many hours a day did you spend nurturing the relationships that are important in your life, whether it's with family or neighbors or classmates or other people that matter to you. So you add all of that up, and you know what? That's a lot of hours, and that's a lot of good time spent. So whatever is left, there's nothing wrong with using some of that time for screens for fun. Even if some of these items in green, blue, and red and pink might have actually involved screens, you were still doing things that were very healthy for you. So whatever time is left over could be used for fun screen time. Now, it doesn't mean that all of that time in orange should be used for, the Nintendo or YouTube. And so whatever time is left, some ideas for the younger ones in particular, come up with a creative idea list, a menu, an activity box with ideas on slips of paper they can pick from a box, what they can do with that free time. Some of it could be on the screens. Maybe some of it is playing a board game or playing outside, right? But I think it's most important here for us as parents to reflect on the fact that there is only 24 hours a day, and there are a number of things we need to do in that day that are good for us. And some of those good things might involve screens. And that's okay, right? It's about what we're doing with screens, not necessarily how much. It doesn't mean, though, again, that kids should be using all that time left over on screens. And that's where your rules and the tools that we talked about to limit screen time come into play. All right. Finally, setting the example. Gosh, I mean, we could set all these rules and expectations for our kids, but you know what? Think about that 24-hour rule. What if we had to fill that out for our own 24 hours? Are we spending enough time with the green and blue and pink boxes? We should ask ourselves that. So what rules do you have for yourself? And what kind of example do you set for your kids? Tell me in the chat, are there any rules you have for yourself when it comes to screens? I'm still very dependent on my phone as an alarm clock. I'm also a huge fan of Wordle. So Wordle for me is very relaxing to do before I go to bed, but I could be better about not looking at my phone before going right to bed. I need to work on that. Oh, this is great. I set my phone down when they're trying to talk to you. That's great. Yeah, we do the phones face down, so you don't even look at it in case someone's texting you. You won't see the alerts, right? Phones face down. Yes, we need to make rules for ourselves, but you know what? That's okay. Even if you don't have them, it's never too late. Never too late. Great, thank you for sharing. On being safe, I will say this. It's really fun to talk about privacy because, the most obvious thing we can do to protect our privacy is just turn on privacy settings, right? And I'm showing you a screen capture here of Fortnite. Anybody's kids use Fortnite? Pretty popular game still. Because by default, most apps and games that our kids are using and that we're using, the privacy is not set to the way we want it. And there's a reason for that, because the more information we give up, the better it is for the company who built these apps. But, my first recommendation is make it a game with your kids. When they get a new device or app or game, see how fast they can find the privacy settings and figure out together what level to set it on, because very often it's not set as high as you want. So you always need to make that a habit at the very beginning and teach your children to make it a habit too. This is the first thing that they want to do, is set everything to the highest level of privacy. For those of you who have not checked your Facebook privacy settings in a while, please make a habit of that, because they're constantly changing, and you'd be surprised. We're going to talk later on about a way that you can check whether or not things are as private as you think they are. But the thing about privacy is this. This is what you can tell your children. You know, a lot of the apps and games, things we use on the internet are free. You know, we don't pay to use Google search. We don't pay to use Gmail. We don't pay to use Facebook or Instagram or Roblox. We pay money to use some things in Roblox so that you can do other things. You got to pay with Robux. In Fortnite, it's called V-Bucks. But when you first download it, you don't pay anything, at least not with money. And, you know, even though I'm showing you an example here of Instagram, when you first download that app and all that legal language that goes by, right? Does anybody read it? I don't think anybody reads it because they're on average thousands of words long. We skip right through it and we click I accept or I agree and off we go because we just want to get going with the app. But the problem with skipping through it and then clicking I accept is we did something we may not have realized. In the language, in almost every one of these free apps and games, there is a clause that's written in a way that we wouldn't easily understand, and certainly not our children. But what it basically says is you own everything you do post on these apps. Everything you're doing on here, yeah, that's yours. But you give us the right to use that information whenever, wherever, forever. Okay? When we hit I accept, that is one of the things we agree to. So while we are not paying money to use these apps, we are paying with all kinds of private information. They're watching what we click on, what we're watching. Well, they even know where we go after we leave that app sometimes, right? Everything we're doing online, everything we search for, anyone we connect with, anything we like, dislike, download, click on, all of that is being tracked. So privacy settings are important to protect us from the people we don't know. But privacy settings do zero to protect us from the company whose apps, games, and devices we are using. They know everything. And that is why when we say nothing online is truly private, is because it's not. There's always somebody tracking it. And the data, by the way, is being stored somewhere and backed up and stored in other places. So whatever it is we're doing on that app is being collected in multiple places. That's why we remind our children, look, we're not just trying to scare you into being careful with what you're doing online. It just isn't private. You should behave in ways that assumes nothing is private. That is why. On cybersecurity, on hackers and cyber criminals, they're not necessarily targeting our children, but these criminals go where the people go. So if our kids use social media, if our kids surf the web, if they use search engines, they're going to run across the work of a cyber criminal. And here's the thing, if they're using their devices on your home network where you are also doing work, you could be putting your family at risk. So that is why early on when we said, use security software on every device that your children use to connect to the internet, this is why. Now, they're very keen when I go into classrooms and I ask kids, have you ever seen a pop-up or do you ever get a text that just look really suspicious? Almost all the hands go up. There is something in their instinct that's already telling them that this doesn't look legitimate, or there's something about this that doesn't quite look right. We as parents should encourage our children to trust that hesitation. They should definitely be somewhat skeptical of things and encourage that instinct. If they ever feel they accidentally clicked on something or downloaded something that might have maybe put a virus on the system or brought that into your house, make sure your door is open and they can come tell you right away, because what you don't want is that they accidentally do that and they never told you. And the next thing you know, your bank account's cleaned out, right? Because there's some kind of malicious software that has entered the home and into the systems of your home. So make sure the door is open. And if you ever feel like you're in trouble in any kind of way, I recommend two things. Number one, there might be a place that you take your computers or devices to be checked. Maybe there's someone in your family who can do that. Trend Micro has a free service called House Call. It just scans your systems and lets you know if there's any spyware or whatever on it. House Call is a huge favorite of some of the most techie people in the world, but it's a free service that if you're ever worried, I would recommend you go to housecall.com. I'm going to ask you one last poll here. Do any of your kids have their own cell phone? Yes, no, not yet, but soon, or not for a few more years? Do any of your kids have their own cell phone? Okay. We've definitely got, I would say we're split here on this question. And so I'm gonna end the poll right here. And we're kind of at 50-50 here. 50% of you said yes, and 50% of you said no or not for a few more years. Eventually, all of you are going to say yes once your kids are old enough. And that's fine. I think it's great. Again, as I said earlier, it's your decision of when you think they're ready for a phone. Be clear about what it is they need it for, and if you feel they're responsible enough to take care of it so it doesn't break or get lost easily. But here's the thing about the phone, that even those of you who've already bought a phone for your children, if you haven't had this conversation yet, please consider doing it. And that is this. There's one thing about the phone that every kid loves, and it's the camera. And you can have really wonderful fun with that camera. There's some great apps with filters that you can, do funny things with it. For those of you who said yes to TikTok, you need that camera to create those videos. Use the camera to FaceTime with family, right? Or video chat with family or friends. So the camera is very beneficial in a lot of ways. I do want to emphasize a couple of things, and this comes from data that has been reported by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's a trend that became troubling over the last 2 years, and it is a rise in reports to them about self-produced images taken by young people of themselves, images that they most definitely would not want the whole world to see. And I know there might be some young people listening out there. So I think you all may know what I'm talking about. I want to tell you to tell your children, and if there are any children listening, I'm telling you, you should never, ever, ever, ever feel pressured. If someone asks you for an image like that, no matter how much you like them, you should never feel pressure to take one of those images for any reason, and certainly not send it to anyone. For all of the reasons we talked about before, that nothing online is private. And even if you take the picture and never send it, that already also puts you at risk, because if things on your phone are being automatically backed up to iCloud or Google Cloud, there's already another copy of it out there. So please do not ever feel pressure to take one of those images of yourself, and certainly not send them to anyone. If there's someone who you don't know that's trying to pressure you to do that, please talk to parents right away, because it's important that your parent can take action here. And parents, if this does ever happen, consider not only reporting it to your local authorities. The problem is the person doing it might be someone many states away, So the other organization to report it to is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and that's 1-800-THE-LOST. 1-800-THE-LOST is how you would reach them, and I just put that in the chat. You know, the possibility of this happening to your kids is not necessarily high, but I think with this trend over the last 2 years, I felt very obligated to share this information with you. Please have this conversation with your kids to not feel that pressure. The second thing I want to raise with you is a question that I was asked many years ago by a father. And he said, you know, my son is a really good kid. A lot of people like him. He's just nice to everybody. He's charismatic and so on. But his phone is in my name. So what happens if someone sends him a picture like that? An underage, a classmate that sends him one of those pictures. What should we do? So again, keep this in mind as well. If that ever happens, tell your children that if as soon as that happens, especially if it's one of those kinds of photos, they need to tell you right away and then delete it, okay? Do not walk around with it on your device, because technically the creation, possession, or distribution of these kinds of images of underage people is technically a felony. But they're not going to punish, law enforcement is not going to punish young people the way they would if it's somebody who's 50 years old. But it's really important that you take action. So the children reporting it to you is the action they can take in addition to deleting it. And then you as parents, I recommend if you know the parents of the child and you feel comfortable, letting that parent know. But if you aren't comfortable with that, perhaps, and it's somebody in their school, reporting it to the principal, the administration, or even local law enforcement, taking some kind of action. And this is why. If for some reason that image actually was sent to more than one person, there will be probably an investigation. And they're going to know who received it. So you doing nothing could be putting you in a very precarious position. That is why taking action is very important if that ever happens, okay? I know this is not a comfortable conversation, but I think it's an important one. And, we are seeing that it's more peers of children who are asking for these photos, not necessarily strangers. It's their own peers, okay? All right. And finally, on gaming, I think, we've kind of talked about this already, but I think for any of you who anybody have kids out there who have a trouble leaving the game when you tell them, hey, time is up? Anybody have kids like that? Yeah, 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, right? And they just don't stop playing. Right? Anybody have kids like that? Yeah. So I will say this, in addition to making sure you're using privacy settings so they're gaming with people that you're comfortable with, I recommend thinking about, I just need to finish one thing. Can I finish this level? Can I finish this game, right? Any kids playing 2K out there? Oh my gosh, they just want to finish that game. Try to think about games that might actually have time limits. There are some games, and I love Minecraft. I think there's some great things about Minecraft, but there's no end. It can go on and on and on. So if using some of these time limit things, it could cause tantrums sometimes because all of a sudden it just cuts the kid off. It's better to actually, kind of give them the countdown. But what's even better is to think about games that actually are timed. And that way you don't even have to say, all you have to say is, you're done with that after this game is over, right? And then turn it off. So that's just something we would recommend. On being kind, I think I will sum it up this way, that we are teaching kids from the first day of school, even in preschool, what it means to be a good friend, right? What it means to be nice to others. And this is something we should continue to encourage, of course, but for all the reasons we said, why nothing is private online, everything we're doing is being recorded. So all of those actions add up to a picture of who you are. And depending on who's looking, what will your actions online say about you? We know many stories, especially of the older ones. Maybe somebody posted something that was just horrible. Perhaps it was inappropriate, racist, sexist, whatever. It was just not good. Even if you didn't post it, but you liked it, that is not going to be a great reflection on you, right? We know of kids who've had scholarships to college rescinded because of that, literally because they liked something, not because they posted it, just because they endorsed it in some way. Whole scholarships taken away, and could have been avoided had they not done that. So, but kindness isn't just about being nice, right? Kindness is also about respecting other people's boundaries. So anybody ever have somebody post a picture of you or your family on Facebook that you didn't want them to, that you didn't realize that they did? Did that ever happen to any of you? It's a pretty awkward situation when you see it happen and you're sort of irritated by it, right? And sometimes those people you're related to. So a lot of this happens in middle school when the kids get the phones for the first time. They get on social media for the first time. They get really excited about using Instagram. So they start taking selfies and they start taking group selfies. And then they're just posting all over the place, right? But the drama starts when, well, the one person looks good in it, but everyone else is not happy with how they look in it. And then people start talking behind each other's backs. I can't believe he or she posted that, blah, blah, blah. And all of that kind of drama could be avoided. It causes a lot of issues in middle school. Could be avoided if we teach our children at a young age, hey, you okay if I post this? If with their close friends, they can just start doing that as a habit. Are you okay if I post this of us, pictures of us? I think can help avoid. That's a way of respecting others' privacy, right? Ask them. Also, other kids are going to have different rules than your own kids. There will be kids who will not get phones until 8th grade and others who will have it in 5th grade. There'll be kids who are not allowed on social media till later and others will be using it earlier. Some who are allowed to play violent video games sooner than others. So I think as parents, what we can do to engender kindness and respect is to say, look, everybody else is texting each other, but that person doesn't have a phone yet. Can you please give them a call or send them an email if they have email, so they feel included in whatever the plans you've just made as a group of friends are. That's just an example of how you can show kindness and respect when it comes to technology. And finally, with social media, we all know that, and obviously Facebook tried to hide it, but even Instagram proved that social media can start to create feelings of, my life is not as perfect as everybody else, you know, because everyone's trying to curate the most perfect versions of their lives on these social networks. We've all probably felt it when we scroll through Facebook, right? So we as parents, though, we need to remind our children that they are not equal to the amount of likes, followers, comments, friend requests that they get, that they're worth much more than that. That's our job as parents, to make sure they're not tying their value to what's happening in social media. And that's how we can help them direct kindness inward too. So as parents, be supportive, be prepared if ever they were to experience unkindness online. Ask yourself 2 questions, and hopefully you will never have to refer to the answers. The 2 questions are, what would I do if my child was ever the victim of bullying online? The other question is, what would I do if my child is the one who was unkind to another person online? I think it's important to prepare for those instances with the understanding that you may never have to go back and look at how you answered those questions, right? If we do the things ahead of time, like encouraging kindness, respect, and kindness and respect online. And when you find good things happening, examples of people being kind online, you know those stories, those feel-good stories that you'll find sometimes on the internet. Share those stories with your kids so they know that the internet's not just full of hate and trolls and misinformation. There are, in fact, many good acts happening all the time too. I'm going to bring it home here with being savvy and explain 2 things. The first is that, as you know, it's very difficult anymore to know what we can trust and what we can't, what is real and what is not on the internet. It's getting even harder. And the best thing we can do is, as parents, is to encourage one behavior, and the behavior is pause. If you see a headline, if you see a video, if you see a text, if you see a news story of any kind, and that makes you feel something really strong, that is a flag right there. Anything that's designed to elicit a strong emotion is a red flag for you to pause, because at worst it's clickbait. Sorry, at best it's clickbait, but at worst it's something trying to truly misinform you, misdirect you, or harm you in some way. And so asking questions, which I won't enumerate here, but together with the National Association for Media Literacy Education, we created a guide for parents on how to have healthy relationships with media, to start to think critically about all these things that we're seeing online and how to distinguish between what is trustworthy and true versus what is not. So I highly recommend you take a look at that. It's on our website, which I will share with you here in just a minute. Finally, have any of you ever looked yourself up on the internet? Tell me in the chat, if you've ever looked yourself up, what did you find? Have you ever looked up your own name on the internet? And if so, what did you find? Put that in the chat. I have found people with my name, Lynette Owens, who you can write to in jail. Apparently there's a Lynette Owens in jail, it's not me. I found someone who owns this really awesome convention, meeting, exhibition business in San Diego. Oh gosh, Melissa, a woman with my name was, oh, I'm very sorry about that. You found your cyber twin, basically, right? You found your cyber twin. So when we look ourselves up, we might actually find people who share our names, but are actually not us. And for our children, this is actually a good thing to start thinking about, because at some point they're going to potentially apply to college, apply for jobs. They want to know who their cyber twins might be so they can explain it away. But the other thing they might find is actually themselves. You might actually find you, private information you thought was private, for example, out there on the internet. So we recommend as a good habit to check this regularly. And you don't have to go searching. You can actually go to google.com/alerts. You don't have to go searching. You can set up a Google alert, put in any name or phrase that you want to be alerted on. This is an example just showing Trend Micro, right, my company. But you could put your child's name, you could put your own name, you can ask how often you want to be alerted, and you'll get an email. If you're using Google, you'll get an email about something being posted. And this happens to me for my work. I do a lot of public things, so I do get these alerts regularly on my own name. And we think this is very important because of a few things. Number one, this number. Okay, this number is coming from a survey done every year since 2014, 2013 by Kaplan. Kaplan is a company that does a lot of the preparatory exams for colleges and so on. And they started interviewing college and university admissions officers. And they asked them, beyond the application, would you ever look up a student on the internet? And way back when they started the survey, the number was 25% said yes, then 30 the next year, then 35, 40, it kept going up. And this past February, the most recent study, 66% of them said, I would. I think it's totally fair game for me to do that. And this past year, when they looked, for those who did look, 57% found something that was not necessarily helpful to the application. It convinced them that this is probably not the kind of student that we want. On the flip side, 38% found something that convinced them, yes, you know what? This is the person we want to accept. And that is why it's important not only to talk to our kids about what not to do on the internet. Imagine if we told them, put every privacy setting on, don't say anything, don't do anything that would, harm your future or even expose you to a stranger that might know where you live. Just don't do anything, just hide it all, right? So if they looked up your child, they might find nothing, and that's fine. But imagine that they're equal to another student, and that other student who looks exactly like them on paper on their application, that student figured out a way to showcase how they've mastered the internet. Let's say they're a writer and they have a blog, or they're an artist and they've got a place where they posted a lot of their work, or they're an athlete and they have a Huddle account showing the highlights of their athletic performance, or they're a singer or a actor or some other kind of skill or talent. They've figured out a way to use the internet in positive and productive ways that they wouldn't mind this admissions officer to see. That's why it's important that we encourage our children not just what not to do, but also to use the internet in good ways. And good ways can be just learning a new skill, but also they could promote a cause that is important to them or raise funds for an organization that might really need it. These are ways to positively use the internet that you can talk about or showcase. As I said before, accomplishments like writing or art or performing or any number of things. And I'm a big fan of contests because if they've got a particularly good skill of making videos or, written word or whatever it is, there's so many great contests out there for kids. And contests are good because you could start to collect a portfolio of things you've entered into these contests, even if you never win. That's okay, right? But contests also teach how to stick to a deadline, how to follow rules of the contest, and have your work evaluated by others. These are all great skills that can be practiced in the context of contests, okay? And maybe one day they win. That would be great if they won something too. You could showcase that as well. And so, again, we want to make sure that we're teaching our kids to be great digital citizens, thinking about these 4 areas of being online, but how to be safe, be kind, and be savvy while they are there, and understanding our role as parents on supporting that journey for them. So we did create a series of online tutorials, which are fun little animated videos accompanied with a Kahoot quiz, each of these modules, as well as an activity sheet like a word find or coloring page, and a conversation guide for you as parents. Please have your children, especially the ones, these are really designed for that 6 to 10-year-old age range. Please have them come to our site and check these out. They're only about 2 minutes each. And it's a great way for you to take what you learned today and bring it home. And have your children learn along with you. We did just announce our screen time module, actually just came out also this week. And we have many others coming down the road. So we'd love for you to have your children give this a try as well on our Kids Cyber Academy. So I encourage you to keep things going, you know, stay active and up to date with things going on in the world of technology and your kids. Communicate with them often and with other parents about this topic. It's not a one and done, meaning you came to tonight's session. This is not the end of it. This is something you should constantly be having conversations about. And my favor to you is, my ask is to do one new thing you did not do before tonight. Maybe it's to change the password on your router. Maybe it's to, you know, consider TikTok family pairing. I don't know, turn on the YouTube supervised account for your kids. Try the Cyber Academy. Just do one thing you had not done before tonight. This is our website where you can find all kinds of resources, trendmicro.com/internet-safety. And when you leave tonight, you'll see a survey. Please fill it out. It's very short. It's like 4 questions. We'd love your feedback. And if you include your email address, you could win 1 of 5 copies of Trend Micro Maximum Security to protect up to 5 devices in your home free for a year. So no obligation. If you don't want to give your email, that's fine. But if you leave your email, that's how we'll be able to tell you if you won a copy of this. So I encourage you to put any questions in the Q&A if you have them now in English or in Spanish. Please put your questions in the Q&A. And if there are no other questions, thank you all so much for spending your evening with me. Again, my name is Lynette Owens, and here's how you can reach us, which is at internet_safety@trendmicro.com. We are hosting several more of these sessions between now and the end of May. So if you know of other families or even other schools that you think might benefit from a session like this, go to our website and you will see the remaining dates that we're offering. We typically have multiple schools that you see, like you saw earlier, coast to coast together. We're trying to bring communities of parents together because we think that's important too, not just the information. And I appreciate all your interactivity online as well here in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to Aida, who is our interpreter this evening. Muchas gracias.